Hey guys, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Cerberus. I'm Peyman Askari. I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Timothy Knight. Tim, welcome. Welcome. How's it going?
It's good. I'm very excited today because André is not here because he's sick. So that means I get more mic time. So I'm very happy.
So just to be clear, you're excited that our friend is sick.
He'll think it's funny.
Uh,
Maybe he just has a little frog in his throat.
But what do you think? Should we go the whole room so they can see the mess, or do you want up close so they can see our imperfections?
Now let's do like this because we don't really have anything that we have no panels that we're sharing or anything, right?
So like this?
Yeah, why not?
Sure.
Oh,
yeah, I was gonna make a joke about how Andre has been smack talking Hydro-Quebec, and they finally sent somebody that beat the crap out of
him. The beat down is there. Yes.
He's been talking about all those illegal things they did back in the day,
right? Like selling electricity to Americans.
Wasn't he shorting electricity or something?
Wasn't sure. we don't talk BlackRock strategy around here, right? The big electrical. You call that the big electrical short, Quebec style.
He did some shady things back in the day.
Some shady, but he was told to do them. So Nuremberg doesn't apply to Quebec.
We are without Andre. We're lost. Clown World. Yeah, that's my name. Don't wear it out. Did I spell it wrong somewhere?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for reposting. If anybody, if you were watching, please repost the stream. We're trying to break a record so that we can make Andre feel super, super stupid for not showing up today.
Yeah, because the show I couldn't get to, you guys got better views than when I was on it. So I was starting to feel that I might be on my way out the door. But now Andre's not here, so this is my opportunity to prove that I'm right.
It's time to pay back the favor.
In which case, I'm definitely on the way out the door. And everybody's reposting the stream, so I better actually have something to talk about. All right.
Yeah. Let's. Man, I feel like you're too close, man. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I am close. I am. It's just.
It's like somebody talking right into my face.
What's that? It's the scene from the Disney movie Aladdin. Close up screen. Too close.
Oh yeah, man. You dated yourself, mind you. I'm old enough to remember that. Nice toque, Tim.
Great. That was a great movie.
Payment Clause, you too. Payment Clause, yeah.
Payment Clause. That's fantastic. See, now you have to show them your shirt, your sweater.
Yeah, but now I gotta stand up with my back problems.
Yes, you and your poor back. There it is. Everybody take your screenshots. Witness. That's great. I love it.
I feel like the quality of our production seriously gone downhill.
The quality of our production. So we were saying to ourselves, we usually take like an hour or so on a Thursday evening and hammer out what we want to talk about and get some files and slides or whatever ready and do a little bit of planning ahead of time. And we decided we don't have enough viewers to justify an hour of my time to do this. So we'll just, during the course of the week in our conversations, we'll put together what material we need to do. And we slammed it together in like 5 minutes last night. Well, it was Peyman did all the heavy lifting. And so here we are today, completely discombobulated.
You double your the amount of time you put into the production, and you have the number of viewers.
So it's the
calculus.
This is economics and scaling. We're just going to go with it. All right, where are we at? Almost 5 minutes of saying nothing. We got to give these people value for their money. Imagine being in a political party where they gave you value for your money.
I don't understand the concept.
Yeah. You're still not giving us your money, and we're giving you no value. Like, it's the real quality, not quantity. I saw that.
Hey, as long as there's money coming in, good either
Yeah,
way.
yeah. The bank still accepts pennies. Yeah. Okay. What was the first thing we want to do? The
Yeah. So the first
first
topic
the
we wanted to talk about, you want me to start it out, or do you want to do it?
well, like but I can, but it's just a short lead in, and that's observing that very slowly the Conservative Party is bleeding into the Liberal Party.
That wasn't the first topic.
It
You're
wasn't the first topic. Oh, what's the first topic?
the
It is.
bureaucratic class.
Oh, the bureaucratic class. Right. So on Substack, I've been playing with the idea of using AI to develop research ideas. So I'll go to AI and I'll ask it a couple of questions, and it'll spit out. I do the deep research so that I can have um, citations to pretend that I know what I'm doing and say, "Hey, I have citations. Go talk to them." So then it'll spit something out, and I'll modify it, and I'll ask another question, and then as I do, I fine tune it, and I make something, and I throw it up on Substack to give people an opportunity to, hey, that's an interesting thought. What about that? And then just to generate conversation. I'm not trying to say anything or change the world. I just want to, do something a little more of a journalistic nature, right? So we're actually doing research, actually providing citations, actually using numbers that AI may or may not be hallucinating, because I just can't be fucked to go check the citations. So this is kind of what I've been doing. But did this bit looking at the bureaucratic layer or the upper middle class and its relationship to the elite, particularly in the Canadian, socioeconomic structure. And it was remarkable because it said flat out in about 2,000 words. It said flat out that the upper middle class is not the doctors and the lawyers. It's the bureaucratic layer directly beneath the political elite. And that bureaucratic layer, that's where the bloat is, which we already know because we talk about bloat, right? We talk about the increase in the bureaucratic class, right? In federal politics and whatnot. We know this. But the numbers and the research comes back and says this is a barbell structure, right? So it's, you have the quote unquote working class at the bottom, this remarkably increasingly smaller lower middle class, which is most blue collar workers and low and lower management and whatnot. And then the educated class, right? So that'll be your doctors and your lawyers, etc. And then there's this upper band, which is quite wide, and that's a bureaucratic layer. And this the my thought is that this is effectively the aristocracy. That's what I was thinking. So I shared that with Payman, is that we should really talk about that. And it's interesting because most of the UK Commonwealth nations share the same structure.
It's all tainted. This stupid Commonwealth. I think we should replace the word Commonwealth with British Empire.
Right?
That's what it is. Let me come in like a wrecking ball and let me just dumb it down. So before, when we had upper, lower, middle, and then upper class, so lower class would be like working class, somebody working in a factory assembling toys. Middle class would be anything from like a general contractor, electrician, plumber, to a doctor. And then upper class would be like the CEO of TELUS or BC Tel at the time. Now, lower class is anybody that works and pays taxes. Middle class is anybody that works for the government and they get like ironclad pensions. And upper class is the CEO of TELUS.
Yeah. Yeah. So if and we've said this during, like, with my work with strategy for the People's Party of Canada here in British Columbia. We have strategy meetings where we talk with candidates and whatnot and say, how are we going to reach or to convert a a upper middle class whose paycheck is coming from the party we're trying to replace, right? So it's the idea um of an employee who has a union that is no longer representing their particular, right, their particular goals, or they're no longer respecting that. And then does that union member have the option to simply step away, say, you're no longer representing me, I'm going back out on my own? So the the thought is the middle class is thinning out. The middle class is thinning out. So how how do we well, I guess we don't resist, but how do we respond to a socioeconomic structure that is increasingly the article used the word bifurcated, right? So split into two halves, where like they've got this fat section at the bottom and this fat section at the top, and then the middle class. So that's your plumbers, and that's your, that's the white collar and the upper blue collar, etc. They are increased. Well, look what's happened with home ownership, right? And with um, long term debt and these things that are increasingly pushing people down toward the bottom. Those at the top, promotion and extension, etc., is generally maintained through despotism or nepotism. Who you know, not what you know, which is a very common thing I remember hearing for the early '80s. When networking and multi-level marketing was a real conversation back then, 20, 30 years ago, and it was who you know, not what you know, and that's very, very real. That's very real. The
I'd like to
further
point
up,
out that the 80s was not 20, 30 years. It was 40, 45
yeah,
years
well,
ago.
I just have some timers, and I'll stick with that. So, yes, the '80s was 40 years ago. So, um, I find it interesting because I actually didn't have that view. I didn't I didn't see our socioeconomic structure like this barbell until very, very recently. So I find that I too have been caught in this Canadian ideal, right, of equanimity across all strata, and it does not exist.
Yeah, just some mentions. JT, I'm glad you like it. JT says it's a very interesting topic. Grandaddio, good afternoon. JT says you sound like John Lennon, Tim. So
I But John Lennon would sound like this.
too soon, too soon. And let's not do Yoko Ono. That's for sure.
No screaming. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um,
Wait for my album.
what was I saying? I brought this up. I read this in a history book that when Emperor Augustus came in, so Augustus was the loser kid that took over after Caesar, destroyed the Republic, or after Caesar, Augustus came in, and he brought with him all of these bureaucrats. And what were they called again? Etruscans? No, not
Oh,
Etruscans. I thought
equestrians.
the equestrians. So they were
Yes,
the
the equestrians.
bureaucrats of the days. It's just this artificial middle class that has
Hmm.
allegiance to the bureaucracy because they suckle off the teat of the bureaucracy. This is not normal. This is not, you have the laborer who resents the white collar worker because the white collar worker has more money. At the end of the day, both the laborer and the white collar worker work. Maybe the laborer works more hours for less pay. But in this case, that bureaucrat doesn't work. That bureaucrat's he works, she works, but the bureaucrat's a parasite. She or he doesn't produce. They just consume taxpayer money. So they're creating this artificial system. It's almost parallel, but they're like a parasite. They're trying to destroy the host body, which is us.
Yeah. And it's not that administration or bureaucracy is not important, because it is. Because in a sophisticated society or civilization, we need to maintain records. There needs to be process flow. We're in a very large country, so forms and process and record keeping, this is important. But when you have layers that take the policy, how did Charles put it? The party has the policy and they make the legislation, and then it becomes a bureaucrat's job to figure out how to turn that into a program. But that's not the way it used to be, right? So we have a political class as the top of the bureaucratic layer. The political class, all they effectively do is produce legislation. And then it is up to the bureaucratic layer to determine how that legislation affects the general mood, right? The general direction of the country, and the programs that it will execute. And the MP has very, very little contact with it. So you end up with this historical, large, and and long with a lot of longevity, right? A MP can be out of office inside 4 hours, but a bureaucrat who's good at his job can make a career out of it. And if that bureaucrat has been there since Broadbent's day, then he's more likely to continue to have that same mentality and that same idea. When in that layer, programs, when the government says, "Oh, it's a 12-year program," and you're like, "Yeah, but you're not going to be here in 4 years. So why do you do 12 years?" Because the bureaucrat at the bottom told him that's going to take 12 years. So while there is a necessary role for administration and bureaucracy, we've made it too fat. And we made it fat because the cronyism, despotism, nepotism is there intentionally designed to protect the elite from the very laws which are supposed to keep them in check.
Look, I get that. Roads, like you need roads. What do you call it? You need running water. You need sewage. You need electricity. But what's happened is they are replacing. They figured out a loophole in the system. Why go work in the private sector for 75% of the pay when you can work in the public sector where you control your own salary in some ways because you can increase your salaries and you can give yourself perks like peg it to inflation, give yourself an ironclad pension. So they've created this, I don't know, what do you want to call it, a Frankenstein's monster, or it's just exponential growth of the bureaucratic sector. It's unchecked and it's suffocating we the people, the private sector, the producers.
Yeah. The increase between the end of Harper's reign, because he was somewhat dictatorial at the end, the increase between the amount in bureaucracy at that layer and to today is 100%. So what is that? So 10 years, right? 15 to, yeah. So in 10 years, we have a 100% increase in the number. And the government brags about that. What would Trudeau say? We're guaranteeing good middle income jobs. What is I find particularly troubling is the stagnation in the bureaucratic layer, and which stagnation leads to the same problems we see on indigenous issues such as plumbing. You're kidding me. It's the year 2025 and there are still communities in Canada that don't have active potable and gray water delivery and disposal. And then someone says, because I know contractors who've worked in similar projects, and they say what happens is the money for the project is lost somewhere in the middle, at the top and the bottom, and all the way around. Everybody takes their piece of the pie, right? So there are way too many middlemen, way too many people on the side. Everybody takes their piece of the pie that's been budgeted away. And by the time you're finished, you've got a half-started plumbing project or road project or construction project that it just stops. It just stops because there's no more money. And it's rampant. They get away with it. And they get away with it.
I laughed there. I'm reminded of a movie. It's like 20, 25 years old. It's called Kung Pao, Enter the Fist. It's a horrible movie. But there's this part where, as a joke, they teach this like Chinese kid Kung Fu wrong. So like, you block a fist with your face or you block a kick with your balls. Or like if your nose starts bleeding, it means you're winning the fight. It's almost, you've got that same negative mechanism in government where if the more people you hire, the more you increase the GDP. So they're like, oh, the GDP's doubled. Well, yeah, like no shit, Sherlock. You doubled twice as many bureaucrats.
And you guarantee failure by forcing DEI, right? You signal your diversity, you signal your virtue, and then before you know it, you've got untrained people flying airplanes with 200 people in the boat behind them, right? Or landing the plane upside down. I still don't know how that works. So these policies, typical guy movie. I'm not responding. I'm baited. I'm not responding. Really, no, not responding. I really want to respond.
Go for
Can't
it.
do it. You pick it up. Now she's got me up. Now my brain is stuck.
Go for it, Tim. We can lose our most loyal viewer. How in the world was here every day?
Die Hard is a Christmas movie. So we're going to completely lose where I'm going now. And somehow
Upside
this
down
will all
airplane.
relate, right? Somehow this will all relate to British Columbia politics, and here, coming out and shaking hands with, the new interim leader for the Conservative Party and all that other silliness. I'll bring up what JT said. I can't read it from my position. Hence, all the industrial complex reliance on the problem. Yes, exactly. Yes, right. And the Soviets did the same thing, and early on, the Chinese did the same thing. Right? We don't talk about Cambodia or Africa or those communist entities over there, but they did the same thing. Where DEI is a very good example of intentionally using virtue signaling to satisfy all the bleeding hearts, using DEI to intentionally cause friction. Right? So you need qualified people who are trained and educated and capable. You intentionally put them into a protected position, knowing they're going to screw up. And when they screw up, anybody who complains, well, they're the bad guy. Like you're losing, but you're winning. It's the same thing, right? You're intentionally stopping the kick with your face, and you believe that that's exactly the way to do it.
Tim, I'll be honest. I never put the two and two together. So government they are blindly increasing the size of the bureaucracy because it adds to the GDP. And then they're introducing DEI, which reduces the qualifications and the quality of the workforce. So
Yep.
they're burning that candle from both.
Yep.
So basically, you need because of the lower quality, you need two bureaucrats to do the job of what one used to do it.
Yep.
You almost have to double it.
Yeah. So let's say you've got one can of dog food and two dogs. So I can feed one, all the can, or I can feed both, and neither of them is full. Right? So the same mentality is the government for many years now has been developing programs that would, if effectively used, would satisfy the mandate they're given. But they don't. They spread it all the way across and demand that this is equality, this is equanimous. So you end up with one can of dog food and you're trying to feed two dogs. A direct correlation. Now I'm going to be accused of racism with the jump in food bank activity in like Ontario and BC, right? Like a 400% increase. Well, and the demand has increased, but the supply has not. Right. So that's another thing too. Is what are we also seeing in Canada? We're seeing a restricted supply. Right. Toilet paper, perfect example. That's just a little tiny test, right? Cannot spare a square back then, right? So these are little small tests that they give us every now and then. Yeah, it takes 3 DI to replace one of us. And that's by design. So they say we created 30,000 jobs last month. The truth is you only filled 10,000 positions. Right? So and if they and people in those bureaucratic roles who are brought into those positions will be able to stay longer in spite of their incompetence, in spite of not being well matched to the job, because they're a protected class.
Let's see what Granddaddy here is saying. I haven't read this. I hope it's not inappropriate. It's more pernicious. The regulation is quite literally designed to capture markets and consolidate power, all under guise of freedom and safety for consumer and public.
Right. So what would be one of the captured markets? Oh, the LGBT market. Because that's a market. That's a market. So what's another market?
BC Law Society, public education, College of Physicians.
Right. They're all markets.
Engineers, yeah.
They are markets. So what is the government peddling? Ideology. So then they fine tune, customize that ideology to the particular market. This is like product development 101, right? You go to a store and you see a small bottle that costs a little bit more, and right, then you see a larger bottle that's actually the best price per volume, and then the really big bottle that only gets sold at Costco, right? It's all customization, right? It's what do you call it? Customization at niche marketing at scale, and that's intentional. And in Canada, you can actually do that because of Canada's unique geography and our unique mega population centers, right? So you've like we've talked about this before. Canada has 4 major population centers, right? So here on the west coast is basically the Fraser Valley, Vancouver, and then southern Vancouver Island, and then in Alberta is Calgary to Edmonton, that corridor, and then you have to go all the way over to Ontario, and so that'll be the Windsor Toronto corridor, and then again will be the Montreal Quebec City corridor. 4 major population centers, which with about 70% of the country's population.
I'd just like to point out it's those exact 4 population centers that are politically brain dead. That are
And it's true.
Problems.
It's true. I make the joke that so after Cain killed Abel, he went to the land of Nod and built the first city. And to me, the key word is Nod. Right? Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to complain about the convenience and comforts that a city can afford you, right? But the problem is, what do you sacrifice for those comforts, right? I go to a convenience store. I know I'm going to pay 30% more because that's the way the market works. I'm paying for convenience. That's why we call it a convenience store. So in these systems, the entropy sets in over time, right? So, and Canada is, we've been saying this for several years now, and maybe even several decades, depending on who you talk to, but we're overdue for a civil redistribution, right? Or a civil reckoning, right? Like in this a civil war. We are overdue for the civil war. And I'm not suggesting that we want to do that or that it is coming, but have we forestalled the natural evolution of a civilization? Is the British Empire still too big to fail? And are we inadvertently contributing to that?
The reason I have Granddaddy-O's comment still up, he says regulations, regulations quite literally designed to capture markets. I had a guest on, and he used to live in Vietnam, and he said, Vietnam is nominally a communist country. So, in a communist country, no one is free, no one has hope, no one has liberty. And he goes, but everybody owned their own property. And he goes, everyone that owned their property, they had a business out of that property. I don't want to get into the, whether you can actually own it, because then you get over to Canada, you're like, well, we don't own it here either. But the point is, like, one person had a restaurant, another person had a hair salon, somebody selling bricks, like you're using your land to generate revenue. But in Canada, that culture, I never saw it. Like when I'm looking at the zoning in the residential community growing up in the 90s, it was purely residential. Like there was not even office buildings. So there's a separation of those two, and I feel like that's part of this whole regulatory scheme where people have lost touch of, it's your land. If you have an acreage and you choose to not use 100% of that acreage for profit generation, that's on you. But when it's through regulation, you're like, well, it's just the way it is.
And Daniel's comment is interesting because we can ask the question, does regulation itself create barriers of entry, like a license fee or an environmental assessment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Right. Yeah. Now I'm going to extend on the next thing Granddaddy-O said. You might want to bring that up. We live in the jail, where I've referred to cities as prisons without walls, and there's no need for police because the people police themselves. And as even where I live on the edge of, the larger municipality, so to speak, largest mega city in the West Coast, find that pernicious behavior of you're more or less treated like a squatter. And even if you own your own home, there's so many hurdles you have to go to put a garage on the side of your house, etc., or whatever you want to do, right? If you want to rebuild your plumbing or something, everything has a hurdle that you must cross. And as we've seen since the COVID madness, getting a bureaucratic process to move forward on any upgrade to your home now takes years, not months, where once upon a time it only took weeks or even days, or didn't apply at all. Is it your home? Yes. What do you want to do on it? I want to add another bedroom. All right, have fun. Oh, go talk to my Uncle Joe. He's got the lumber yard. He can tell him I sent you. He'll give you a deal. That day's gone, right? That day's gone. You don't you and look at what the Cowichan problem and what's beginning to happen over in Quebec as well. Do I own my land? Been paying it for 20 years. Do I own it? Been paying property taxes for 20 years. Do I own it? Maybe. What do you mean maybe? And this is where we are. And not to try to make it a circular argument, but the percentage of our population that is in the bureaucratic layer that provides and establishes those regulations and licensing and protocol, that's the bureaucratic layer that are interpreting the law and turning it into programs and policies. That layer lives just down the street from me, right over here, and that over like they live in the same system over which they are, you know, regulating. They live in the same. They live in the jail. So you have wardens who, when their shift is over, they open their cell door and go back inside. It's crazy.
No, I can give an example. So you could ask the question: these people have to live in this society. Why would they make this system that they themselves would have to navigate the regulatory labyrinth? If you're a project manager, and if the boss comes to you and says, "Listen, you have carte blanche. You project manage this any way you want." You open up a spreadsheet. You create 10,000
Oh,
columns.
you had me at spreadsheet.
No, but you say like, all right, column one. When did you open this spreadsheet? What time? Minute, hour, second. When did you start typing? When did you stop typing? When did you close it? Did you in the middle of this stand up? Like you can micromanage this, and to you it's cool. To everybody else, they see that you're destroying the company. You can't get any software development done.
Yeah,
but they don't see that.
Yeah, so maybe that's actually a job, like a job description requirement. Must scroll on the tiniest detail ad infinitum. I've hired people, and you put a little bit of psychology into it because you're looking for a particular type to do a job. When you're at the bureaucratic layer, when you're at the government level, when you're like upper management, etc., you are intentionally choosing certain personality types to perform certain roles within your organization. And if we Canadians are an increasingly complacent, compliant, it's not just a matter of holding open the door at the coffee shop and having three grandmas walk through. It's more. It becomes more cultural than that. So that we go along to get along. And there was a time when it was safe to do that because, and maybe there wasn't, but I like to think there was a time when it was safe to go along to get along because everybody was going the same place. So now we have this protected bureaucratic layer that, yes, they go back into their cell when they're finished their shift. Like Daddy almost mentioned, they benefit from it. They have the better vehicles. They have the new fridge. They have better quality food. They go out to dinners a lot. They holiday every now and then, et cetera. It's right. So, and they have the big pension, et cetera, et cetera. So do they, and not to make this, I'll be virtue signaling if I say it, they sell their soul for this. But here I am sitting in a reasonably well-to-do neighborhood and I'm no longer living downtown. So what did I sacrifice to gain this? Right. So these questions are something I have to ask myself. So there's an interesting question, Daddy-O. Is bureaucratic behavior part of Canadian identity? If so,
where's the question? I was going to say, let's go to some of the questions. Right? Let me see if I can find it. There we go. Yeah. Is regulation and bureaucracy part of the Canadian identity? Why don't you take a crack at that?
Well, who remembers that I am Joe, right? My name is Joe. I am Canadian. Who remembers that Molson Canadian commercial from some time ago? Oh, it's fantastic. That moved an entire generation. That was fantastic. And to me, yeah, it's aspirational, but I read that resonated with me. And you know what doesn't resonate with me is that Dylan twig from down in the States trying to palm off cheap American beer. That doesn't resonate with me. So our Gen X and the boomers who are still with us, that lumberjack hardy hockey playing, right, that going to the beach and the lake in the summer and hunting every fall because that's what your father and your uncles did, that was very much part of Canadian culture. And in the last 15 years it has evaporated. It has evaporated. So, and has it, is it even, I guess it's a cause and effect question that I end up inevitably asking, right? Is the situation where we are today due to my own negligence? Where's my responsibility, not just as a citizen, but as a Canadian? Sorry, as a human, as a person, as a man. Where's my responsibility in this? Right? And it's, I think it's a fair question for us to also use when I go out into the public or out into, the political sphere or whatnot, and I find people who are of a different persuasion or a different intent or a different culture or et cetera, than me. And I have to ask myself, are they as lost as I feel like I am? And so maybe that changes my approach.
Let me answer Daddy-O's question in the form of a couple of stories. The first one, I was thinking the other day, what doesn't constitute culture, right? And it's very little. As it turns out, it's anything that you're doing in the moment. Like if I'm walking to the bathroom, that's not part of my culture. The way your bathroom looks, the way your house looks, where it is, and how you use the bathroom, that's your culture. But what I'm trying to get at is the laws themselves they're an expression of your cultural intent, but they become a part of your culture. So the bureaucracy, it's a part of your culture. It's something that Canadians wanted. Now, the story I wanted to tell, when I was a kid, and one of my only memories from Iran, there was a farm. It was my uncle's farm. They had a porcupine. They caught the porcupine. They killed it. I don't know how they killed it, and then they put it on like the fireplace mantle. Today, you probably couldn't do that. The reason they give for that is that it's a protected species, endangered species. But the reason that they have the ability to call that an endangered species is because the bureaucracy is so big. Back then, in the entire village, you might have had like three people working for the government. One of them was the sheriff. They didn't have the resources to send out to monitor who's killing what. But we've enabled this behavior through taxation. Taxation is not, if they took that money and they burnt it, we would be better off. They take that money and they invest it in the bureaucracy, and next year they demand more and more and more, and that money is fueling our own enslavement.
There's a scene from the Batman movie with Heath Ledger's Joker where he has all the money in the great big pyramid and just throws a torch to it. Who wants to do that? I do. Right? It's so the phrase that we've often used, particularly Gen Xers, is sometimes you just want to watch the world burn. And the question is, who's there? And if you find yourself there, why are you there? And so as I've been becoming more involved in the political sphere over the last 6 years or so, and then all of my other work that I've done previous in business and whatnot, I begin to say, to what degree am I responsible for the conditions that exist today? And we all do play a role. And I think that role ends up being, what's the right word? Cumulative. And the problem with accumulation is eventually you reach critical mass. And I think Canada is, if not past a point of critical mass where where entropy is now the rule of the day, DEI is definitely entropy in policy, as far as I'm concerned. You are intentionally introducing the destructive layer, right? The rustification, right, of what's happening. Are we now, when we've said on the show before, we are, as far as I'm concerned, right, Canada is over the cliff. That our economy it's in free fall, and what matters is if you survive, the land at the hitting the bottom of the pool at the bottom of the waterfall afterwards. But to what degree am I responsible? And if it took me a lot of small self-minded or whatever decisions going with the crowd or etc. over the course of time, how can I maybe not undo it, but how can I do something in a more constructive direction at this point moving forward? And that's all kind of stuff. One of the like something I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous early on was I was at a cake for an old timer, and the old timer he didn't want to talk because old timers don't talk anyway; they just scowl at you. But he had a younger friend of his speak for him, kind of a puppet master idea. And the younger fellow said something that really stuck with me, and that was, "The sober horse thief is still a horse thief." And that's when it dropped. That's when I got it. That's when it made sense because my behavior is indicative on uh my behavior is indicated by my motivation, right? My behavior is directed by my motivation. A sober horse thief is still a horse thief. But just because I'd put down the bottle, I was still an ass. I was still self-centered. I was still manipulative. I was still codependent. I was still, and in some ways, that previous need for alcohol or whatever it is would be transferred either to other people or other activities or other substances or whatever. So the country has to decide: is the country a horse thief? Right. So in spite of all the virtue signaling, right, in spite of all the, well, we're not boomers anymore, or, oh, we're not that Canada, like we're not the, the subservient to the et cetera. We're not that anymore. Okay, you're not that anymore, but you're still an ass. Right. And that's kind of the direction that I've been trying to take my life.
It's a very good story. Unfortunately, I have to follow it up with some housekeeping. If I just like to ask everyone in the room, if you like what you're hearing and if you like Mr. Knight's stories, consider giving us a like, share, and subscribe. And if you could share the stream, it help us grow our numbers. We really want to stick it to Mr. Meloche when he comes back. Get a new record.
Randomized, unmarked bills delivered in a brown paper bag. Leave it under the statue of Diefenbaker by the South Park bench in some park that I can't think of in the moment.
That
on a Friday afternoon, right? Yeah, in inconsequential fiat.
Non-sequential bills. Canadian dollars are not accepted.
Canadian dollars, right? At this point, I'll take Monopoly. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll take Dogecoin, but no Canadian dollars.
No, we'll take Dogecoin. Oh my God.
Granddaddy-O says everything requires a license or permission from the government. You can't operate without towing the line. I did an episode with Bruce Party, and he goes, literally, there is not a single thing you can do without the government's permission. Like it would have to be something like picking your nose on your own property, as long as nobody can see you. Everything you do requires permission from the government, and that's not by accident. That's how they grow.
Yeah. And we do have solutions for that, but the solutions require, I'm going to use the word, a collective approach, which is something that the conservative-minded individuals really quite garbage at, because we are very independent. We are critical thinkers, independent thinkers. And inevitably we believe that our way is the best way because we're such critical thinkers. So it makes it very difficult for conservative-minded individuals to group together, to collectivize. But the way forward to something like everything you need, you have to go through the government in order to have access, is partly resolved by Martin Luther King Jr.'s approach to civil disobedience. The trouble with civil disobedience in his line, his method is not, there was no effectiveness. There was no effectiveness found by doing it alone. And the conservative-minded individual, being an individualist, will often attempt to do something alone. So it's a very difficult place for us because we know what is wrong. We all see it. We've been talking about these things for years. So when we sit together and chat over a cup of coffee or whatnot, we're like, oh, this and this and this, yes, I know. And over here, this and this, and yes, I know. We all know these things. There's not a lot of the population from like our circles who don't know what we're talking about. We're just putting it into a different flavor. We're using a different lens. But the reality of doing something about it, I'm going to sound like an Italian, the reality of doing something, right, is entirely related, dependent on us getting along long enough. the beauty of being a liberal is the moment I find someone with a good idea, I attach to it. And that's your character because they're collectivists. They attach to it. Very much team players in that sense. They don't do any thinking for themselves, which makes it really easy to manipulate them. But they're very much want to go along to get along, and that's part of their character. And it's important that people be like that. But it's also important to realize when you're being taken advantage of because that's your nature, right? Codependency problems and stuff like that. So the way through this, knowing everything requires a license, can't operate without the et cetera, like it's ridiculous. You pay a tax on absolutely everything now, right? The GST should stand for gouge and screw tax, right? The solution for us is more Martin Luther King style civil disobedience. The challenge is to be collective enough to support each other because when you begin going down that road, some of you are going to get arrested. And we already see that, right? We have people who've gone on the barbed wire ahead of us. So we see that. Some of you are going to suffer from, criminal litigation. Some of you are going to suffer from civil laws and civil lawfare, et cetera. Some of you are going to lose your jobs. And so we've seen all of this. And one of the problems that we've suffered as Canadians on the right, so to speak, is we end up being a bunch of little small individuals and you end up stepping ahead of the line by yourself and you're an easy target. And so the challenge for us, if it's at all possible to restore some sense of honor and respect and responsibility back to the nation, the challenge for those of us on the right is to be just collectivized enough to be a large enough body to force the government to be replaced with people who are honorable and responsible. And that's a hard thing to do.
No, I agree. When I talk to people, they always, people on the right, conservatives, they come to me with ideas. We should message like this. Here's a good strategy that'll work. We should do this. And I always ask them, like, who's we? Because I'm looking around. I don't see anybody behind me. It's just me. And they're like, yeah, that's what I mean. You, Peyman, you go through this. I'm like, thanks, but no thanks. I already did that in April.
Yeah. Yeah. I had, I was, can't remember where I was learning something or I was in a small class or something. And I asked the teacher a question. The teacher's responds and says, there's an old story there when the rabbi is teaching their students and the student asks a question. The rabbi says, perhaps it is because you are the one who asked the question that it is, it is the creator that wants you to discover the answer. And my thought is, fuck off. I asked you the question. That's why I gave you my money. Right? So I could ask the question.
The rabbi way of asking, like saying, well, what do you think should happen?
Yes. Oh, what do you think? Yeah. And what's funny is that's actually a very conservative, right? There's wisdom in it, but I'm sorry, pal, but when I pay you to teach me, you will answer the questions according to the contract you signed and took my money. It's hard for us conservatives because we're reasonably well educated, regardless of where you are, where you're from, or whatnot. Reasonably well educated. So then you'll ask somebody a question. If I ask somebody a question, it's because I don't know. Unless it's because I'm just being a dick, right? And I'm playing with them. But if I ask them a question, it's because I don't know.
You're talking about Socrates now, aren't you?
Yeah,
be honest.
That's right. We need to be more liberal.
No. I still hold the power to kick you off this stream. Tread carefully. Yeah. Let's go to Granddaddy-O. He's got a series of comments, and I wanted to bring these up. I'm not quite sure what this was about. Try that here. The insurance alone on it is punitively restrictive. It's probably something we said earlier, let alone municipal regulations. We live in the jail. When you are born into a prison, you don't see the bars. You think you are free. This goes back to what we were talking about earlier when actually Granddaddy-O asked, is it a part of our culture? And if you're born into all of these regulations, it seems normal. Take public education. I guarantee you, if you went to 10 Canadians and you phrased it in a certain way, they would think that without government, you can't have a school. Like without government, kids can't be educated.
You know, I find interesting is because I was raised in Newfoundland and Catholic. I went to like mostly Catholic schools and stuff. And in my mind, it was the Catholics that did everything. That was my universe, right? Meanwhile, the Salvation Army, they have their own school just down the road. Then the Pentecostals, they have their own school just down the road, right? And the Mormons, they had their own school in Utah, right? So, and so the parochial system, and so the world in which you are raised becomes your worldview, right? And so the we perceived public education, as example, or medical, the healthcare system, etc. We perceived that because it was working a certain way in our young and formative years, that that's the way it worked. So let's go back to the barbell image, right? So if you have a child who was born into a bureaucratic layer family or an elite family or middle class family or the working class or poor families, that is their worldview, and the system perpetuates itself. So this the when you look at these these graphs, right? I can't remember what they're called right now, but when you look at these distribution graphs, they are only moved over time by international behavior. So you look at Canada, you will see that all these graphs are similar because you have the UK, Canada, uh, New Zealand, and Australia, because we all basically share cultural DNA. We share general European culture, right? Western European culture. And of course, Canada being as large as we are and as attached at the hip to America as we are, because so much of the population is right on the border. So much of our technology is shared. So much of our entertainment is shared. So much of our education is shared. So much of everything is shared on the largest undefended border on the planet. Eventually, you think like Americans, and you're trying to hang on to some type of identity that you were learned in your small community when you were a child, and that no longer works anymore because that's gone. It's been absorbed into some new monster. I don't know where I was going.
You were going to support joining as the 51st state?
No, I had a friend of mine. He said, "I'm hoping that Saskatchewan becomes the 51st state because then the map would look like this."
I heard that one. Yeah, I heard that one. I'm more of a supporter of the nipple theory. So you draw nipples
Nipple
around
theory,
Vancouver and Toronto, and then everything
right?
else is cool Canada, and that'll be
Everything else is
sucky
cool,
Canada.
Canada. Yeah, I I've drawn maps and I've shared documents about reenacting Canada before the railway, because the Trans Canada Railway was the death knell to small communities in the heartland of Canada. Because everybody's, well, how many movies have we seen where the railway comes through town and a small bustling community that's not near the track dies, right? So and so Canada suffered from that very early on. But prior to the Trans Canada Railway, there was, at the 55th parallel, they had drawn a line across starting in like James Bay, like Thompson. So you have cities, towns that were intentionally built near the 55th parallel, Thompson, Prince Albert, I think, in Saskatchewan, Grand Prairie, and Prince Rupert. And Prince Rupert's valuable because it has such a fantastic deep water port. So there was actually a line at the 55th parallel, and early discussions about what are we going to do with Western Canada was actually turn that into 4 provinces, right? 4 below, 4 above. And they went, yeah, but if we do that, they're going to have more representation in Ottawa, and we don't want that.
Yeah. This is a common theme. Let me give you my novice interpretation of that. If you drive from Vancouver to Ottawa, like all the way up until Ontario, it's just one road and a couple
Yeah.
towns. You get to Ontario, it's not even a highway anymore. It's an old ass road, and it goes through a series of towns, and there's just towns everywhere. Like Ontario is built in the way that a society would be built if you didn't regulate them to death.
So that, without sounding too pessimistic, means that everything from the eastern edge of Manitoba all the way over to, well, let's say the boundary of BC and Alberta, because British Columbia was quite well developed long before it ever joined Canada. So you look at those three prairie provinces, they were intentionally designed to be productive. Yes, because Ontario is so old, right? So they were intentionally not developed. They were intentionally hobbled. And what's in Manitoba? Well, you have Winnipeg and Thompson. Thompson is a nickel community with an airport, and it's not too far from the Hudson's Bay. Okay? So then you have in Saskatchewan, you have Saskatoon, Regina. I think even Regina is small. I think one of the reasons they put the RCMP training there was to try to boost the local economy, create some demand, right? Generate services. And Edmonton and Calgary have been doing well, like as far as like early development is concerned. I think Daddy was right. The Ontario is old, and it is. It's 400 years old. 300?
Are you
300
skipping ahead? I don't know where these comments. Oh, okay, that's why. Sorry, I'm still behind.
No, it's
Um,
okay.
I wanted to talk about my friend JP. So I do a podcast with him as well, and he's from the Maritime provinces. I hope I don't get it wrong, but I think he's from.
He's a blue noser from Cape Breton.
Okay, there you go. So he's from Cape Breton, and he's telling me how he watched his community get transformed from a productive one based on mining and some natural resources. They shut those down, and now everyone there is on the government dole. And if they want to survive, they have to leave and they have to come back. And I just look at this, and this is tragic. This is a calamity caused by government because they shut down these resources. And now these people are made dependent on those. This is no different than if I'm a local drug dealer and I sell you drugs and I get you dependent on my product.
Yes. Yes. And the thing is, it's very human to do that. And that's what really boggles, I guess, us on the right, because independent thinkers and all, is that it is our nature to gravitate toward strong communities or toward readily available services, right? Let's use the rule of what is that? Conservation of energy. If I can get a paycheck every month for, not very much work, then I'll choose that option. So you inevitably create a culture or a generation that they do what they're told to do because, well, someone else signs a paycheck. We talk about that on and off regarding the what Lyndon B. Johnson did to the I don't want to say the word black because it never did feel right. Because I'm not white. It doesn't feel right. I'm European. Well, I'm Irish, so it's still not white. So what Lyndon B. Johnson did with the projects, and how the projects intentionally were promoted as were autonomy and independence, whatnot. But you look at any of these projects that came up in the 60s and 70s, and they were very poorly designed, very poorly maintained, very poorly, and you looking back on it now, you think, was that intentional? Because look what it created, right? Look what it created. Look what happened to their entire culture. You have generations of people who live on welfare. It's all they've known. So what happens when you're the grandchild of a man who's been on welfare his whole life, and his mother, who was a single mother in the 60s, and she was on welfare her whole life, and that's your world. And that's your world. How do you crawl out of that? I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know either. But this goes to what we've talked about, the breakup of the family unit. The two things you and I have always talked about. One is the breakup of the family unit, is decentralized governance. The other one is the importance of property rights, specifically owning land. If you don't have either one of those, your country is pretty much guaranteed to be destabilized.
I think of all the different topics we talk about, we end up realizing the fundamental necessity for people to own land outright. There is no such thing as indigenous title. It's a concept, but it doesn't exist. Right. And then so the narrative is sold to us that this is the case. There are treaty titles. There's not indigenous title. Right. So now it's a different kind of language. What's an example? When I was young, living on the bay on the north side of Newfoundland, my mom and dad wanted to build their own house. And so we couldn't afford any of the land that was in town. So they were looking at the edge of town closer to the highway. And there was actually a creek, and it was the inside of the arm, the inlet where we lived. Very beautiful, very, very Canadian, if you get my drift. And the sale was about to go through, but the municipality said no because they didn't want to spend the money to put in the plumbing. And so it fell.
You bought the land from the municipality. Is that what it was?
That was the no. Was it from the municipality? I was 9, so I don't know who the seller was, but I know that because it was outside the general service area, the municipality refused to put in plumbing. And effectively, what we were doing was actually expanding, right? Expanding the district. It was a town, and so we were technically expanding the town. So that's actually called development, but they refused to participate and they refused to fund for the electrical and the and so it didn't happen. Now, if that had happened, our family would have grown up on that land. One of their children, there were 5 of us, probably would have stayed on that land, right? And, well, maybe there's a blessing, I don't know, because we all end up moving out to British Columbia. But the value of owning land and having that taken from us by not even the monarch or the sovereign, taken by this crown, which is not an individual, it's an entity, it's a collection. What's an example? I can't remember. It's the Piccadilly. It's a UK crown corporation that makes pickled goods for UK, and it's literally got a crown corporation a shield and a coat of arms right on the label. Worcestershire sauce is the same thing. Lee and Parents, right? Those are literally, they're, swear to God, crown corporations. They've got the label on them.
You're telling me every time I make burgers with Worcestershire sauce, it's the king is actually physically assembled?
Look at the label. You don't get to have that unless it's actually legit, right? So Crown Hudson Bay Company, Crown Corporation. So what's the name of that insurance company, the bank that failed in 2008? Lloyd's, was it Lloyd's of London? Lloyd's? Anyway, world's largest bank or something like that. And a Crown Corporation, obviously, right? City of London, probably a Crown Corporation, but that's on the down low, over on the quiet side.
Yeah, be careful. We don't want to get assassinated. So
no, that was no, I'm on so many lists it doesn't matter.
Tim, let's move on. I got a question from Gary, and this is another of the things that we wanted to talk about. We can always come back to the bureaucratic class. Gary Haliki says, "My understanding is that Tim has been replaced by former BC Conservative and current federal Conservative supporter Wyatt C. 1BC. WTF is going on? What the heck's going on? Unfortunately, I feel like I've been here before." So what he's saying, Tim is the former chief of staff. Wyatt Claypool is the new chief of staff at 1BC. And the shakeup has some people with some questions and concerns. And his final statement, unfortunately, I feel like I've been here before. I think it's indicative of the rest of the Canadian population who's, they've put their faith in other institutions, whether it's the PPC or the JCCF or different freedom fighters, and nothing came to fruition. The trucker convoy. So people they've become jaded and their guard is up. They're not looking. They don't have savior complexes anymore. I don't know, Tim. What do you want to add to that?
I think let's look at the trucker convoy as an example of what I'm going to say. Every generation must fight for its freedoms. I don't get to sit on my father's generation's activities. Right. So here we are 3 years after Freedom Convoy saying, oh, Freedom Convoy. Sorry, man. Do you have a Freedom Convoy 2025? No. All right. Well, because Freedom Convoy 2022, they did their job. Right. So the effectiveness of any movement is only for that moment. Right. So, and this is something where some of us as citizens, we're looking for some type of longevity because we maintain our legends, we keep our heroes with us, we move them along with us. But in the political sphere and in the business sphere, why do we have quarterly sales? Why is the government and secular business so happy to maintain Christian Christian cultural holidays? Because they happen every quarter, so they can do, that's a new sale, that's a new PR event, that's a new policy, that's a new, this is all intention, this is all by design. If we want to break away from that, then we have to stop looking at Freedom Convoy 2022 and look at Freedom Convoy 2026. Every generation has to fight for what it has. And we have for too long sat on the successes, right, and lessons learned by those who came before us. And we're not very good at that.
So I made a mistake. I thought this question was about the BC Conservative Party, but that's fine. I said after the April election that people probably would shift their support from the PPC, but mostly from the federal Conservative Party to Daniel Smith. And then Daniel Smith hasn't really delivered all that much. So you see a shift of people's support or their faith into Dallas Brody of 1BC. And I said, if Dallas Brody and 1BC don't deliver, or if they falter, the people will find somewhere else to put their faith. They'll unless they absolutely give up, just submit.
What? Let's go into conspiracy theory. What if that's a psyop? That's straight up conspiracy theory.
Which part of that?
Maintaining or containing the far right, which are now anybody who wants, freedom and individual sovereignty. Yes, it is an easy answer, but what I'm saying is, but it would actually take people to maintain it and do it on purpose. You have a containment vehicle that psychologically or culturally keeps a particular group in themselves, and then as you need to move them along, well, they're a bit too right wing for the Conservative Party, so we'll start talking about separatism, and then they'll attach to Daniel Steele, the Alberta cowboy novelist, right? So let them attach to them, and then we'll attach some of them over to the PPC too, because they're considered far right, and didn't they have a et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and you intentionally move the group around to keep them out of effective civil engagement, right? Is it an easy answer? Yeah, but my suggestion is that if it's an easy answer, then the solution to that is also relatively easy, and that is be aware that you're being dragged around by the nose, right? And look for action, not words, because everything that has been appealing to the quote unquote far right since 2020 for sure has been all talk and no action, with the exception of individual small local groups that went and stood on bridges, right, on the weekends and stuff like that, and local activity that where they went and did protests and things, and these were small local, oftentimes relatively spontaneous events, culminating in, to some degree, the Freedom Convoy. But then after the Freedom Convoy, the air came out of that balloon all across the country. So do suggest that we need something similar to that again, but I believe it will have to be local and organic. So what will be the trigger for that?
In answer to your question, could this be a psyop? I hope not. It's this constant shuffling of people around, so they're expending their energy, starting from scratch again. What I can tell you is I'm reaching my wit's end of every goddamn time something happens, someone comes up and says, "Peyman Askari, you know that's a psyop." I just want to be like, don't you know I don't
But
fucking care?
and I hate the word, but I don't mean it in that
I'm not
film
criticizing
noir
you.
manner,
I'm
right? No,
criticizing.
I get it. I do. I get it. And you know, it's maybe I talk too much and I don't listen enough.
Well, why don't we move to Clown World? She says, after listening to Tim, anything else I may listen to this evening will seem boring and normy.
Yeah, just remember to send the check to me and sign it ahead of time next time because the last one.
No, care of Cerberus. We split it. 50 for me, 25 for the two of you. I'm just looking through the questions. I don't know how it's.
No, we got a lot of really good questions today. My eye keeps wandering over to the list.
Yeah, there's a lot of, what is this Granddaddy saying? Mr. Party is a fellow society member. He is astute and in his understandings of law. I like Bruce Party. I first saw him at the National Citizens Inquiry, and he's calm and level headed, so he doesn't start any fights. I met him in person in Calgary as well.
So yeah, the one BC thing is definitely worth keeping an eye on. If we talked about this, who paid for the documentary? We talked about it yesterday, and I looked up the actual legislation that's responsible for caucus, like legislative caucus budgeting and stuff like that. And if a MLA legitimately and properly applies for access to that funding for Project A or Program B or whatever, and it's all cut and dried, sorted out at that level, it doesn't matter how the media tries to paint it; it's legitimate. So the possibility of like misappropriation or misuse of funds doesn't exist. Is the media just doing their thing? The idea with staff changes, it doesn't look good. So somebody has to make public statements.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
yeah, that's what I was saying too. It's not. It's all about honesty and transparency with the public. So look at what Donald Trump is doing. I don't know what they're up to, but they're doing things without explaining it to the base, and the base is getting anxious. Granddaddy-o. I've been trying to wake people up since before 9/11. They won't wake up. It's futile. You understand that after long enough. They enjoy the prison they live in, comfortably numb.
Comfortably numb. Nice reference. That's good.
So there's something Sean Buckley told to me. He was talking to a woman who was helping out in Poland, and she was trying to get rid of the Soviets for like a decade. And she said nothing she did worked. And eventually the people rose up and they revolted, not because of her effort, but because they couldn't afford food. That's what.
How many times, right? How many times have we said no parent revolts who sends their children to bed with a full stomach?
Yep.
So if that's what it'll take. You might appreciate what I'm going to say next regarding my alcoholism and my recovery. And I use the word recovered past tense. God was satisfied to destroy my body to save my soul. And I don't necessarily mean that in a strictly Christian sense. Right? I'm saying that there are sacrifices that are worth making. And so those who are comfortably numb have sacrificed what? The essence of humanity, in my opinion. And are there times when I've been comfortably numb? Yes, there are. And then when did I become uncomfortably numb? I'll tell you the moment I became really uncomfortable. That was numb and then became uncomfortable. There was a time when I was working the sales floor at Best Buy, and I enjoy it. I like it. Not management or nothing, just working on the sales floor. And I enjoyed it. And the masking nonsense comes, and I'm like, need the money. I'll make it obvious. I'll tell the management I'm not in favor of this. And every time someone picks up a box of dust masks, I'll say these are not N95 masks. And so I made noise about it, but I complied. But I made noise. A mute came into the store and approached me. And in about 3 seconds, I realized we're not communicating. So I took my mask down and I said, "Are you mute?" put my mask back up. And he nodded. Put my mask back down. Because I want everything to be seen because there's the camera. Right? If I'm in a police state, I'm going to make my statements. Everett put the mask down again. And I said, I can talk to you without the mask and we can have a conversation like real people, but you have to tell me to do that because you're the customer. And he nodded. So I took the mask off. And he took his mask off. And we went and talked. Well, sort of, right? I talked. He had made a lot of hand signs. Right. And we had a conversation about 15 minutes, just the two of us, just being normal people. And this increasingly wider gap between the two of us and everybody else in the store who figured we had the plague or something. And so he went and I brought him up and we rang the sale through and off he went. And then I went and reported myself to the manager.
Did you get fired?
No, of course not. He wouldn't fire me. I was like a free trainer. I hang around with the kids and talk and talk about, how to do sales and psychology. And the kids are like, oh, that's really cool. This old timer teaching me how to do it. And so the management was not about to get rid of me. But it was at that moment I realized this is nuts. This is nuts. That was my wake up.
So this is it has nothing to do with your recovery story. I want to go there in a moment. But you said there, the destruction of our humanity. I have another podcast with Jason James, and actually it was just on one of his podcasts. He had a guest on, and he said he's in Calgary, and he goes past this old age home, and there's all these children and grandchildren holding these signs, and the signs say, "We love you, Grandma." And the sign said, "We wish there was something we could do." And Jason's like, "Yeah, there is something you can do. You can go in there and get your grandma out of there." So they, you have these people that brought you into this world. They raised you, and you leave them there to die alone. And I mean, there are certain things that are worse that if you did, you could strip people's humanity. But that's got to be up there, letting your elderly parents die alone. Like you've basically allowed the state to take away your humanity.
It was 2017 or 2016 when Professor Jordan Peterson made the comment, if you're wondering how, the Germans came to support, what happened in Germany as much as they did, be mindful that this, what at the time was it forced thought? What's that word? Compliance? I can't remember that. But when people were saying that there were big, when the talk was about the forcing the preferred pronouns, right? Complaint was it something speech?
Compelled speech.
Compelled speech. Thank you. I'm not good with words. But back in 2016 or 2017, he was already talking about this. And where are we today?
Yeah, nobody listened to him.
Well, the thing is, we listened, right? The people sitting in our audience, they listened. They did, and then this is why they are part of a moments of resistance, moments of change. It is people that are sitting in the audience and people like this are reasons why the PPC exists or continues to exist. The reasons why 1BC was born. Reasons why BC Conservative Party had an upsurge. Right, they were basically the phoenix. They were dead. And they were brought back from the grave, right? In Ontario, three new political parties that are of a conservative ideology. So we know that these things exist in the country. We know these things are possible. So I think the reason why they suffer I think they're hobbled. And they're hobbled by media, hobbled by bureaucracy. For example, when some of Elections Canada's rules are of such a nature that it be very difficult for new parties to enter into the game. And I say that knowing that in 2025, there were actually 17 registered federal parties that ran in the election. 17. But because Canada's system is so old, right, and so gentrified, is that the right word? Right? So basically, we've now turned into the Americans. It's just we flipped our red and blue, but the same ideologies. So these things are possible. And if we find an organization or a society or a charity or whatever that sufficiently represents our ideas and our goals, then we need to be physically more proactive in supporting that. And that's hard to do because we all have children or grandchildren. We all have jobs. We all have, right? Somebody has to fix the plumbing because I'm not paying a guy $125 an hour to do it. And so there are so many other pressures on us that it is increasingly difficult for us to change the system, but it must be done.
I'm just I'm going through the comments.
Mm.
I know there's one that Clown World mentioned this. It's good for you to hear this. Tim, I didn't know you were in the program. To what you explained, my dad was also in the program. I will always remember him telling me that when he was sober for the first several months, he thought everyone around him had changed.
And for the first several months, they do, because they're like, oh, thank God he's not going to drunk drive into the tree anymore. Right? Or whatever. I never did that. That did it. Yes, I get it. I was in the program.
This is a recurring theme,
right? If you're good at it, why do it once?
Tim's driving the tractor drunk again.
Look, he got it up to 50K going downhill. Yeah. I was 3 years in the program before I finally got the 12 steps right. Yeah, and it's just a matter of, like I said, around the 50 years when I heard that old timer say, "A sober horse thief is still a horse thief," and it was at that time I realized, Tim, if you're still a curmudgeonly, self-centered, manipulating ass, it's been 5 years since you had a drink. It's clearly not the drink. So
I wonder how many recovering alcoholics don't understand the meaning of that story and instead go out there and steal a horse, turn a profit.
Look, it's licensed. No, it's not.
I'll give you a Clydesdale for a bottle of Grey Goose.
So we're gonna trade up until we're doing that was that YouTube fella several years back. Started with a paper clip and continued to trade up until he owned a house.
Is that real?
Yeah, it was real. It was amazing. Yeah. But
it
was the power of a movement. I don't know. Well, there was a considerable number and volume and quantity and value of items in between that.
It's impressive. We got Granddaddy-O. Claypool is like a young Millhouse, I agree, or Harper, some would agree. Dual loyal theologians who justify politics by religion. He is a weak man. I've noticed there's a lot of hatred for I always get his name right, Wyatt Claypool. I don't know much about him. I know that he's young. That's not to say that young people can't hold positions of authority, but typically you want somebody who's a little bit older and more seasoned.
In the BNA Act, a senator could not be considered for a senatorship until he was over 30, married, with children, successful business, no bankruptcies, owned land, and was a landlord. And then he would consider for a senatorship. It's a different world. It's a different world. Right?
Now like you can
I could, right? Yeah, $10 says if I were to go to some fringe political party and say, "Hey, I'd like to be a candidate," they wouldn't even vet me. And trust me, you need to vet. so because we're like
someone in the back's like, "That's the drunk guy from the tractor incident."
Drunk guy from the tractor. They're gonna put him on a stamp one day.
What do we got here? The more a man sacrifices on his walk through the fires of life to know and have faced death only makes a greater man. Is that a poem?
No, he's being poetic, but I believe he's correct.
I don't know. Can we dial a friend? Can we call Andre?
Right. No, he's writing in prose, I think. Right. But yeah, he's right. And it's interesting how, and when you're in codependency or when you're in trauma or when you're in this type of thing, then it's difficult to see it. But the more you give away wisely, not stupidly, like you don't have to be a yes man all the time. Learn to say no. Something I still find myself having to relearn every now and then. The more you give away wisely, I'm repeating myself now, the more comes back to you. Right. So if the quality of what you give is well received by persons of quality, there's a reciprocal bill, right? This again goes back to the building up idea. Like a capacitor, right? So they're always the anode and cathode are always exchanging electrical exchange, and so that's one of the means by which the capacitor holds charge. And we need our relationships to be the same way. The drawback with that in a relationship is if in a codependent relationship, someone's always charging. This one's always taking. There's no return, no storing up the capacitance again. I'm just using a battery to compare human relationships. Yeah. So by sacrificing, and there's pain in that, right? There's pain in that. I have to go out and
did you I hope when you wrote your vows you chose a different analogy. My beloved Lucy is like a catheter or a capacitor.
Yeah. First anniversary, fresh batteries.
It's a 9-volt battery. Oh man, this is slipping without Andre.
We're slipping.
Granddaddy O, DUI is another crime with no victim. There should be no such thing. I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this, Tim. In my opinion, if someone's visibly drunk and the police officer sees that you're driving in a reckless manner, yes. But this issue of roadside checks where they just stop you and they ask you if you've committed a crime, that crime being driving drunk, that's got to be a charter violation.
The purpose of penalties is primarily for deterrence. I'm punishing the DUI for disrespecting what is not his road and putting others at potential risk. But the punishment is supposed to be strong enough to deter others from behaving in the same fashion, because one of them somewhere someday is going to run over a mom on her stroller with her kid in it. Right. So it's kind of like being one of the Nazi soldiers and missing every single time you pulled a trigger. Well, you're still there. You're still doing the thing. So I got pulled over once, and I was sufficiently beaten up for it. It never went to court, but the police were able to make my life very painful for the next few days.
Yeah, DUIs they're a serious charge. I had a buddy, he was driving drunk and he passed out driving. He woke up on someone's lawn.
Right.
And they booked him and they charged him.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful with Canada.
Yep. Moving on. I don't want to talk about
Clown World says, I remember attending my father's anniversaries. He was the wisest. I appreciate your story, Tim. And thank you, Clown World. She follows that up with, Claypool is highly disingenuous. Bad news indeed. I don't understand why people hate this guy so much. I mean, what has he done exactly?
I don't know him. I haven't paid any attention. Is that the fella with the Martian alien head?
Yeah, it's like cone heads, but if you squish the cone down and what else? That's it.
Marvin the Martian. It was the green alien from back in the cartoon days.
Well, I would say like Mars Attacks, same kind of head size. Yes.
Big heads, big Star Trek aliens.
God, I hope he's not watching.
I hope he is. He can go do something about that.
Can you imagine? We both try to join 1BC, get involved. He's the one interviewing us. Like, I really like that episode you guys did.
Well, then that would save me the trouble of getting involved in another political party.
Yeah, well, our chances are basically zero now. He is the chief of staff.
Is
Peter Wood says, yeah, he's the interim chief of staff now. That's what I'm saying.
How much I don't pay attention to the news. It looks like Kathleen Wynne. Oh, that's great.
What? Who said that?
Crown World's latest comment. He's the dude who looks like Kathleen Wynne. That's fantastic.
Who's Kathleen Wynne?
Oh, wait, now we need Google was it Kathleen Wynne? Alberta, wasn't she? Or no, Ontario. One of the previous, she was Ontario Premier before Rob Ford.
Wasn't that? Oh, I thought you were saying Jenny.
One of the Fords. Yeah.
All right, let's see.
Kathleen Wynne was Ontario. There you go. WYNN.
Cat. I don't know. Whatever. Google will figure
And
it
you
out.
get the WYNN. There it is.
That's really mean.
Yeah.
Wyatt Claypool looks way better than that.
Orville Redenbacher. Oh my God.
Oh
Never
my-
would have seen it. I never would have seen it.
It's like if Carrot Top and Wyatt Claypool had a baby, you would get this woman.
Right? There you go.
All right, we're gonna get sued.
She has I think the Ontario education program is named after her. They did their version of Common Core or early Soji was named after her. Yeah.
Comment? Okay. I don't follow Ontario politics.
Yep.
Clown World. The Indian takeover of the trucking industry is like an expansion of the
Yeah, we're all gonna get fired now.
Alcohol not necessary.
Not necessary. Yeah. And if it does, it's Fireball with a free pair of flip flops. All right, let's get back to some kind of a topic.
What we've been doing. I don't know what were our topics. We could talk about we're at the end of the show. You want to talk about topics? The BC Conservative Party, like Rustad is to say that he's in the rear view mirror, that would be an understatement.
No kidding, eh? Gone. It's funny because I looked into it and realized that he actually had legal grounds if he wanted to fight, if he wanted to push, but
yeah, but like he's been ousted. What is he going to come back and nobody really wants him there?
And I get it, But what I think is funny is that he actually had legal grounds.
The one time that he was in the right,
right? Yeah, he had legal grounds to fight for that seat. Yeah. No.
Yeah, so I don't know how much you want to talk about that, but I mean, the
BC Conservative Party is going to see a surge, not because of Holford, but because of Pierre Poilievre, who came to. He's already done a PR stunt with.
Man, I gave up. Yeah, I know what you're saying, but I gave up on the BC Conservative Party the nanosecond they got rid of Stephen Malthouse. And I bit my tongue and I said, you know what? All my friends are normies and they want to believe that the BC Conservative Party is going to save them. But that party, it's like the Titanic. It hit the iceberg. It just took a long time.
Here's a summary of what words are hard. What was wrong with the BC Conservative Party before Rustad? Aisha and Angelo Isidoro.
Oh yeah.
That's what's wrong. Right. And they got put into these positions by the man himself, Aaron Gunn.
Speaking of the devil.
Right back to the top of the show. Right back to the top of the show. And yes, so way back in 22 or 21, Aaron Gunn was busy making rounds in the BC political circuit. Right? And then he got his fingers into the BC Conservative Party when it was still kind of sitting down below radar and nobody believed it was ever going to be a thing. And he helped to generate that interest and some energy into it. And then Aisha and Isidoro were all part of that. And Isidoro actually comes from the first executive of the British People's Party of Canada. So there's a story there. And so all of this gravitates toward the BC Conservative Party, and with Aaron Gunn anchoring, established this internal executive level, and Aisha's part of that. Aisha's the one who basically she tweeted after the nurse in Vancouver Island, was saying something about the vaccine, right? And she became can't remember her name, but she became a BC Conservative candidate after the doctor, and then she made statements. And the party said, no, you don't get to do that. You're out. And then Aisha, the president or executive director of the BC Conservative Party, publicly on Twitter called out this woman saying that.
I remember that, yeah. And I called her out for that.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, Aisha, you are, and don't get me wrong, I'm a CEO in electoral district for the People's Party of Canada, but I do not speak on those matters because I'm a freaking bureau. I'm an administrator. I'm not the public face. I'm not the public face. And there's Aisha making a public statement about a thing that she has no business doing, and it also just not cool, right? It's not diplomatic. It's not statesmanlike, and it's not. So it was that just gave me a really bad flavor. And then the more you hear from some of the bickering back and forth between the various layers between the provincial executive and the ridings across the province of BC, and then the ridings are being run roughshod. Um, Candidates are being parachuted in. They're picking their own candidates, and then the executive saying, "Nope, we're putting this one in." It was a mess. It was a mess because I was also involved with at a riding level provincially because I've at that time we were um, philosophically well aligned. But over time, you slowly see the rot making its way to the top, and this is before Rustad. This is before Rustad. So, and I'm not saying Rustad's not like innocent because he's not. Absolutely not. Right? He is responsible for. He's responsible for kicking legitimate BC Conservative candidates out of their riding so that he can put in handpicked Liberal MLAs. I'm sorry, but that's not the spirit of the Conservative.
The party
So
just it went south very quickly. Like the people that got pushed out or kicked out, those are the people that you want in your government. Like these are people like Sean Taylor, like Corinne Maury, that nurse. I think her name was Webb, if I'm not mistaken.
that sounds familiar.
Um, the gentleman that went on to form another, like BC Strong, I think the guy formed the party. His
James
wife,
Davison.
yeah, his wife was involved with the PPC.
That's yep. Marcella. I can't remember her last name. Yep.
Like none of these
Um,
people left because the Conservative Party wasn't liberal enough, you know? Like none of them left because they weren't leaning into globalist policies. They left because they're like, this is not BC first. This is not Canada first. Like these are hardcore. These are the good salt of the earth Canadians that you want, and those are exactly the ones that they pushed out.
yeah. People people who step into these support roles, right? The writing director or secretary, or with different political parties and even nonprofit societies and stuff. The people who actually step into these roles, volunteer into these positions, they're gold. They're gold. And for a party to disrespect them, right, and then to run roughshod over that, and to run against its own philosophy. This is bad. It's just bad, right? It's like it's culturally bad. The integrity is bad. That it's just I'm not even good with words at it because it baffles me that someone who needs me to maintain presence in my region to support the candidate and the party awareness and information is satisfied to disrespect me from their ivory tower.
Yeah, Ivory Tower's the word. I think her name was Jan Webb. Is that correct?
Thank you. That there you go. Yeah. Yeah. So she was a retired nurse and she had been public, prior. And this is the thing. It was at Millhouse is also on the island, right? So the two of them are on the island, a doctor and a nurse, who are prior to being
Mr.
picked up
Claypool.
right? Prior to being picked up as candidates, were in their profession, the respected profession, and speaking out against the vaccine garbage and the COVID nonsense and everything. And they were picked up specifically because they were vocal and public and had a certain degree of infamy and celebrity. So that would translate well into a candidacy because they would already have a support base. I get it because I do the same thing. They already have a support base. And then when they spoke out doing what it is that they do, the party said, no, now's not the time. Don't do that. What? What? So, and then all I hear in my head is that's called captivate. That's called capturing. You're capturing, right? You're capturing the enemy. You're dragging them into your court and saying, "Oh yeah, we're well aligned," and then you shut them down. So let's go for a corporate example. For
Wait,
what?
Granddaddy-O said he's leaving. Merry Christmas, Granddaddy-O, and thanks for stopping by.
Merry Christmas. The Ballard Power Company, which is probably 30 years ago now, was a a Vancouver-based hydrogen power generating company. So they developed a hydrogen cell. They actually had a half a dozen hydrogen cells functional
Did,
and operating
did you
on,
say Ballard?
yeah,
Yeah,
Ballard fuel cell.
yeah, it's a company that hasn't turned a profit in like 40 years.
Right. But they had functional, I'm going to tell you why. Right. And so the idea of being a captured, right? You capture the enemy and then you nut them, right? You hobble them, you prevent them from continuing their activity. So when Ballard proved that we had a functional hydrogen cell, we just need investors to scale up. Ford bought it and then shelved
Okay.
it. Right. So societies, parties, organizations, they all do the same thing. They all do the same thing.
That's a good analogy, and I agree with that. I think that's spot on. Sean Taylor, who I mentioned earlier, he was instrumental in getting the BC Conservative Party resuscitated, and then Aaron Gunn came and took over. I think there was an understanding. They're like, we can't let this grow. Let's take it over. Why would we let the lowly people take control of their lives? We, the anointed ones from our ivory tower, as you mentioned, the vanguard class, the philosopher kings, we're going to tell them what they can and can't do. And they basically, nothing's changed. It's like BC United.
Yeah. So the interesting thing moving forward will be, how does one BC respond from a coordinated media attack? How do they step out from behind that? And my hope is that they meet it face on and challenge the media to produce evidence openly,
Mm-hmm.
not just act like a bunch of finger, because the media does very well finger pointing. Because we now have a culture that, how do I read the news? Well, I read the headline. Oh, then that's why headlines are 3 lines long now.
I want to clip this out and send it to Miss Brody, but maybe we should do audio only since we look like tree ornaments.
Right. I guess my mask won't help either. And my upside down, I can't point backwards and behind. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and my right. So I love my country. I love what it meant. I love what it could be. I love that my children are here. And I am highly motivated. And hey, we can have a little bit of fun on the way. Why not? But I'm not getting paid to do this, so you people need to start ponying up.
I was this might be inappropriate to bring up, but I saw somebody shared a graph, or it was on Instagram or whatever, of how much OnlyFans models have made over the years, and the average, and it's like whenever OnlyFans went live, 2000, I don't know, 10, like
Yeah.
it starts out here, and then over time it just drops down to zero. Yeah. So it's not just us that aren't making money, and nobody is.
No, and that social phenomena is an example of catching the moment at the right time. Right? It's and that's something that business is very good at doing, and politicians have become very good at doing. For example, if I want to give bad news to the people, I deliver it on Friday, and then go home for the weekend. And we've known for 40 years that this is what they do. They deliver the bad news to the people on Friday, and then by Monday we've forgotten about it. We're horrible human beings. Yeah, whatever we get, we deserve.
We can end the show anytime you want, but Clown World says, I still can't believe OnlyFans is a thing. That's like pretty darn close to prostitution. I mean, it's technically stripping. I've never used OnlyFans. The only thing I know about it is what women tell me, ironically.
What I think is what it means as a cultural phenomena, right? What it means as a cultural phenomena. It's a gig economy for people who don't want to drive Uber. It's just more specialized and culturally very taboo.
For when you have a pole, but you don't have a car.
When you have a pole, but you don't have a car. I can't bring my pole to you, but I can bring you to the pole.
This has got to be like every dystopian, cyberpunk movie or video game you play has something like this where people are hypersexualized.
Yeah, but that happened in Germany between World War I and World War II as well. And that hypersexualization, that hyper extroversion, right? That this grand animation, the furry phenomena, and all of this stuff is all an expression of a deep-seated dystopic position, right? That's so the whole culture is experiencing this, and people are just I'm going to say extrapolate, projecting it in an unhealthy fashion. And
Clown.
hypersexualization is going to be one of those because it's about I just want to feel, right? I just want to feel. Well, everybody who participates in this gig economy, they're all complicit, right?
Clown
Whether
world,
they're
she's
right,
just outed
yeah,
herself. The men using
yeah.
it are equally
Oh, of
complicit.
course,
I was not aware there was men on OnlyFans, Clown
of
World.
course.
How do you know?
So, yeah, it's all participants are equally complicit. But what's interesting about the phenomena is, like any fad, it spikes, it climaxes, then falls off, then rolls over and goes to sleep.
And we really need Andre here. He's our ballast.
Yeah. I can't say certain things knowing that his Russian wife is watching.
Oh, she's talking about the men that
Yeah.
are paying to watch
Yeah.
it. I
So,
I
right.
don't know
So
how OnlyFans works.
the producers and the consumers. But this is the same for, well, you could say the same thing about DoorDash. Producers and consumers. The gig economy in which people are trying to make some kind of money in a very unstable economic condition. I'm not saying it
Yeah.
justifies it. I'm not making a moral judgment. I'm just identifying it as a business or economic phenomenon.
Kids these days, they'll never understand the thrill of going to a strip club knowing you have a 50-50 chance of getting stabbed to death. Now, from the comfort of your home, you have OnlyFans.
Yeah. I think when I was young, my level of excitement was which one of us could make our slingshot the fastest and peg the other guy in the head with a rock. So it was different priorities, different expectations.
Did you,
Right.
when you were a kid, like, I don't know, 10 to 15, you guys used to have
Mhm.
fireworks wars?
With fireworks? No, we didn't have fireworks. We built bonfires.
Did you? I'm assuming you didn't have
Mhm.
bonfire wars, but I remember when I got to Canada and
We
I
spent
wanted.
all year. We would save up old tires and railroad tracks and lumber and anything that was flammable all year. And then on bonfire night, the week of, our bigger uncles and stuff would drag all of this down to make this enormous 20-foot radius, 10-foot high pile of tires and lumber and creosote soaked everything. It's just cancer under a flame, throw a few gallons of gasoline on it and throw a spark at it, and that was bonfire night. We spent an entire year prepping for one
You
night.
know what you should do?
That bonfire would burn for a week.
You know what you should do for a week? You should compile a list of everything that today would be considered illegal from what you just
Oh yeah,
described.
yeah, yeah. Well, let's look at railway ties, the wooden lumber from rails, right? Creosote soaked. Those were actually pretty valuable, right?
Let me just stop you right
And
there.
it would
Theft.
be
It would be considered
That
theft.
was theft. That's theft. And at CNN has like near godlike powers over its properties here in Canada, right? So yeah. So it's the things we used to do. Well, we played frisbee tag when I was a kid, and the intention was to knock out someone close to you. We intended to cause you bodily injury. So the goal was that way. It motivated you to play. Right? Don't get hit. Why? Because it hurts. So it was a different culture. And so we make jokes about, it's you go out in the morning, like in summertime, you go out in the morning and basically after the sun came up on a Saturday morning, and you wouldn't come back home until the street lights came on at night, and nobody knew where you were. Your parents didn't know where you were, but came home all the same. It was a completely different experience. Today, we're afraid to let our children do that because we don't know if a bad actor is out there.
Did you used to make bombs when you were a kid, or is that like an IRGC thing?
That's an IRGC thing. Yeah.
We used to have. You never had.
Although a buddy of mine from high school made a pipe bomb on purpose.
I knew some white kids in high school. They used to make pipe bombs. They almost put the
Yeah.
pipe bomb in the principal's car, and I'm like, this is a rich affluent neighborhood. This is like the Middle East.
So yeah, he made a pipe bomb, and it was on his driveway, and when it went off, it cracked the driveway.
Jesus.
And so slab on grade for your average driveway is like 4 inches, right? So that's a lot of power.
We never used to do anything pipe bombs in Iran, but everybody had gunpowder, and they used to put it in like an empty paint can, and you blow it up, and
Yes,
the paint
right.
would go up.
Yeah.
Did you guys
No,
used to do
we
that?
didn't. No, we just gave the kid the gun.
Shoot the paint can.
We're going hunting today. Yay. Right? I was 9 and I was before I first used the 12 gauge. Right?
You guys are getting a bunch of lawsuits
Yeah,
after
we got a
tonight.
bunch of lawsuits.
I never said
I was-
which principal, which school.
Yeah. I was 12 the first time I took part in a competitive 12 gauge competition. That was at a scouting event. That was really amazing. Like all these things that kids don't do today is just such incredible stories. And you tell them these, and I'm not old. I'm 57. I'm still young. And so you tell these stories. Well, maybe it's because I grew up in Newfoundland, and Newfoundland is basically one generation behind everybody. That's why people think I'm old.
Does the name Chuck Woolery mean anything to you?
Yes. Radio music host or something, wasn't he?
He was on Family Feud, but I think also he did have his own podcast. He was telling a story about his father-in-law. So he goes, so Chuck Woolery passed away. His father-in-law must have been in school in the 1920s. And when he was as a kid, like 10, 11 in school, they would in the middle of class, they'd go out, it would be shooting practice, and they'd give the rifles back to the kids to go and put unsupervised in their lockers. Like that's the level of responsibility that these kids had.
Right. Yes. And I'll be honest, I think today's children have that level of responsibility, but their parents don't trust them. Right? I don't know how many youth I see, early 20s. My 4 children are all late 20s and early 30s, but how many children I see youth in their 20s, and I talk to them and I listen to them like, this kid's savvy. This young fella, this young lady, they know what's going. They see it, and at some level, our generation chooses to ignore that they are aware and that they're capable and they are thinking and they are absorbing and they are modifying and or resisting in their own fashion. This recent surge of people signing off of their social media, a lot of young people are, what do they call it? Dopamine something, right? Dopamine fasting or whatever they're calling it, right? Dopamine. And they are intentionally not engaging because they themselves have come to see and recognize social media is going to eat my soul. I want real relationships. So it makes me wonder, now let's take this on a kind of metaphysical, spiritual bent, is in the cycle of humans doing what stupid humans do, that we're in that part of the cycle where it's beginning to come back around. Right? Because the youth organically built into their desire to experience and expand and find their own person are actually, that in them is built what it might take to save us from ourselves.
Well, it can't be possibly worse than my generation, your generation, and Andre's generation, because the three of us they're just idiots. We destroyed everything.
It can be worse because we could be in Nigeria.
Right.
It can be worse because we could be in, Venezuela.
What I meant was that old saying, hard times make strong men.
That's my reference.
Yeah, the youth are the strong men, unless they're still the weak men that are making the times harder. But yes. I don't see that.
That's right. I told you to fix this. Oh, sorry, I was on TikTok. Put that down and go back to work.
Maybe we should end it. We're at an hour and 54.
I think we should end it. Yeah, it just turned into random story time.
When I was your age.
Back when I was your age, son. Yeah.
Clown world, salty to the end. Actually, Tim, folks from Nigeria are all here.
Why are they making more money than me?
She got you there, Tim.
That's very good. That's clever. That's clippable. There, see, everything's clippable. Like we measure everything in sound bites. Who's got
I was
the
going to
smartest
say,
guy?
we can end it here, but I guess you and I will see each other in the jail cell when the CRTC comes after us for this episode.
If they're smart, they'll keep us separated. Question us independently, right?
This prison's not big enough for the two of us.
Right? So they'll go to you and they'll say, Tim rolled over on you. Try to get you to squeeze. And they'll come to me and say, Peyman rolled over on you. And we're like, I'm pretty sure that SOB Andre rolled over on the both of us.
I'd probably fold like a cheap suit.
He just wants to make sure he gets the top bunk in the gulag.
Thanks for the stream, gentlemen. P.S. Peyman, I'll let you know if I spot some cranes. Zing. Inside joke.
Quick question. How many viewers?
14 million viewers this time.
Awesome. So we're almost 7 billion. It's fantastic.
Almost, yeah. Almost new record. No, we got 230 viewers.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
It was a good weekend night, Tim. Nice chatting with you, and thanks to the audience.
Hug your children. Merry Christmas. Festivus for the rest of us. All the things.
Goodbye.